We'll have a discussion among the presenters. May I invite each of you to take a seat up here, and we will have the. So what we will do is Mr. Feng does one. Vincent, please. What we will do is we will first have a short discussion among ourselves of what we have heard, because clearly we have heard a lot of things, and to help in the digestion process, I think that we should evaluate some of the things that we have heard. So what we are going to do is that I'll give each of us around 5 minutes to make a short evaluation of what we think is particularly notable in what we heard today, and then we would open to the big questions from the floor. I'm committed to getting all of us out of this room by 4 p.m. to beat the famous gridlock that exists outside our gate. What that really struck, let me begin by saying what really, the first message that resonated with me was a very simple one, which is that how do you get talents? To get talents, you have to allow people to reach their potential. And for that, you need high quality faculty members, which is what Dwight emphasized. So that alignment of conducting racial quotas on the faculty in addition to racial quotas on the students was not necessarily such a good move. Now, the result of which might be that we get the result that Ghauth told us, that when he gave exam to his multimedia university faculty who are teaching English, only 30% of them passed the exam in English. So in short, to me, these two links up is we should think about what is the secret of happiness. One way is to have low standards. Another one that we are being encouraged to think about is we achieve happiness because of achievements that we are proud of. And in order to have good faculty achievements, Feng Hsuan tells us the importance of competition. We should see upon it as part of the mechanism in which we improve ourselves. And in order to have that kind of competition, the universities would need to have operational autonomy. In other words, you cannot micromanage everything they do, because in order to compete, they have to be innovative. They have to come up with a better way than the other person. And that you cannot forecast beforehand what's the best way to do it. That's why giving operational autonomy to the different units and giving equal playing field to private universities and public universities. This is the old economist line of competition is good if it is to be mobilized for the greater social welfare. And here, I think in order for the government to be willing to open up the universities for competition by giving autonomy, we need a change in the mindset that was often talked about. The mindset of other universities to be only be instruments of social engineering. In other words, there's a particular worldview we want to push that would benefit a Western group, or do we want people to accept that view after they've considered all the options that are available? I think a strong set of beliefs is one that when examined independently by people, they all come back and say, yes, that is the right thing to do. So in a sense, this is the opposite of social engineering. It is to open up people's right to empower themselves with free inquiry, and maybe they come to particular viewpoint that the government would like them to have. But as we know, that people, just as people should be allowed to make mistakes, but that's part of the learning process and the freeing up of competition. So that's what I think to have been the most important lessons that I've heard from the group. So Dwight, would you like to stand up?
Yeah, I guess in terms of one of the things I learned from the discussion, I think the quote I liked the best was, not because he's from Harvard, but the Elliott, President Elliott quote, that the system has to be basically geared to the society that one is in, and therefore there is no nice, neat formula that everybody should follow based on the U.S. system or Taiwan or Korea or anybody else. It has to be, and in the Malaysian case, it clearly has to deal with, effectively, with the diversity, the ethnic diversity, and the uneven background of the different ethnic groups. But and to me, I mean, the issue is how do you, I mean, as Wing puts it, I mean, how do you empower people? How do you empower everybody in the society to basically pursue what they want to pursue? And you can't do that all with the university system, but it's a big part of it. And for that, you want people to acquire as much strength as they are capable of and being able to compete if they want to compete. If they don't want to compete, that's okay too. But what you don't want them to be is to basically be rentier, sitting, basically getting rents that somebody else has generated, and they're able to use political power to get it for themselves. And that's true whether you're rich or whether you're poor. Poor people can also basically be living on rents. The bigger problem is when rich people do, because then they're taking a lot more. So the issue is empowerment, and for that, as Wing got my message, I mean, within the universities, you want a first-class faculty, for sure. Exactly how you get the right mix of students. You don't want students to all be the same. So you don't want any one group. You want a mix. Harvard could fill its entire class easily with absolutely perfect scores on the Scholastic Aptitude Test, 800. It could have it all African American, and it could have it all Anglo-Saxon, it could have it all, you know what. But they don't want that kind of class. They want it to be, they don't want people to be in their own silos, and I don't think, and as a minister, as I quoted a minister of education a few years back in Malaysia, he didn't want the Malaysians to be in their own silos either. So I mean, it's those kinds of, empowerment is not just reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's learning how to live in society and learning the different groups and so on. So I think I'll stop there.
Ghauth?
I have managed universities for 17 years, private and public. I think generally we know how the path to take to become excellent, how to create excellent universities. But I think the obstruction is just too many. That's one. The obstruction can come in the form of human beings, can come from the form of systems, can come from the form of policies and so on. So that's number one, we have to recognize what is happening in this country. And secondly, I think we lack really good leaders. We have people who just wants to follow. They may be vice chancellors or presidents, but they want to survive long by playing safe. This is the problem. Because I think if we have more leaders who are brave to, I don't mean to organize a rally, you know. And then you get arrested under Sedition Act and all that. I'm not suggesting at all. But we need leaders who dare to put across views, who dare to make a change in the system. Rather than to be very careful about everything, at the end, he becomes the most nicest person on earth, definitely a candidate for paradise, but he wouldn't take the organization very far. I think leadership is really in short supply in this country, within the academic institutions, you know. Okay, so I mentioned the first is the issue of what the various obstacles. Secondly, we don't have good enough leaders who are willing to break down the walls of all these obstacles and so on. And very often I find that it is not that people cannot accept that what you want to do, but it's just that you are not showing the way. We need leaders to show the way, you know. So I think this is really the issue in this country. You see, of course we can wait and we can pray that God will do something for us, that things will change and so on. But I'm not so sure whether God will be happy with that or not, you know. I think we as academics who is supposed to be very open and willing to speak up and so on should drive at least, you know, contribute towards changing the whole system. You know, everybody should speak up and so on, you know. Yes, we can say, we are not allowed to say this, say that. As long as we don't touch into the boundaries that we shouldn't be making statements on, but if we talk about, hey, Vincent, I think you should work harder. If you only slept 2 hours yesterday, I think you shouldn't sleep at all. We should be commenting more as academics, you know. I think that's the way it should be. So this is the situation in Malaysia, and my biggest worry is if we just let it go, other countries may be running faster than us, and we may lose the race after all, you know. And by the time we realize that, by the time that we are ready to change, it may be too far away, and there's a lot of sweat after that. So it is a very complex situation, it's a difficult situation, but I think the leaders, the managers, the staff, the students must say much more, must be much more. When I say means, I don't mean always to protest and make noise. I mean constructive things, you know, make things change for the better, come up with better ideas, push the system to its boundary. And more so in the private institutions where actually they are not so much being helped by the bureaucracy and by the system. The private universities have much more room to move around. You know, what you don't have so much is money. You know, but other than that, I think you have much more autonomy and so on. I think we are in an era of great challenges, but I think every individual who loves to see our education progress and so on must do our part to do much more, you know. I would say that is generally the situation we are in today.
Thank you. The next speaker is Feng Hsuan, and before he speaks, I'd like to remind us that one of the strongest messages I took from him was the importance to stop the brain drain. Largely because the reason why Malaysia does not have a dynamic manufacturing sector is that our engineers cannot do reverse engineering. The reason we cannot do reverse engineering is not because we don't have clever people. We do not have enough clever people. Basically, true progress comes when there is a critical mass of people who reinforces each other's ability, such that 1 and 1 is more than 2. When you don't have critical mass, it explains why we are in the critical mess we are in. MESS. That's what's wrong. So, Feng does one.
Do I still need to speak?
Give us the truth that will set us free.
Hey, I've spoken enough, I think. I learned a lot today. I listened to people that's far more knowledgeable than I am regarding higher education. You know, we all want to build great universities. We need to ask really the fundamental question, what does that mean? Does that mean we want a lot of intellectual properties produced by faculty and students? Does that give us the KPI for our success? There are several things that we did not talk about today that I thought maybe I'll just throw it out for people to think about. One is Malaysia as a nation in Asia Pacific allow our young people to fail? I have a very good friend who runs the biotech industries and university system in University of California, San Diego. And he tells me that surrounding the university there are about 500 companies that's in biotech. So I said, well, that's exciting, but how many new companies every year? So, oh, it's about 150 new companies every year. I said, wouldn't you have an explosion of companies 5-10 years from now? He said, no, it's still 500. I said, why is that? Because 150 to 200 fail every year. And when they fail, they rewrite a better business plan and go forward. And I said, what is the role of the university? Is the role of the university to create those IPs? I said, no. We want the university to produce the brightest students and the brightest faculty to do whatever they want. We don't want them to be boxed in to do things that what industry specifically wants you to do. A university is not that for that purpose. I remember when I was at the University of Texas at Dallas, I was invited by Texas Instruments VP for research for a dinner one day. Arrogant fellow. He was telling me, well, you know, you're a small university, we'll give you projects, you work on it. And I said something I think today is still reverberating in Texas Instruments corridor. I said, you know, 100 years from now, I can tell you University of Texas at Dallas is still going to be here. I'm not sure you will be. Think about the companies that have disappeared. Kodak, Xerox. I can tell you, I'm not even sure 10 years from now Google will be here. And so if we become tied to the profit-making operation, then we destroy the soul of the university. And when you destroy the soul of the university, then you have nothing. But I do want to emphasize, Malaysia is losing the best students to the rest of the world. 1,000 brilliant students go to Taiwan every year. They don't come back. Many hundreds go to China now. Many of them go to Hong Kong. Now even my university is grabbing this in Macau. If you cannot keep the brightest people in Malaysia, your future is questionable. So I hope that this would be a wake-up call for this conference, from this conference. The issue isn't changing the university. The issue isn't more IPs. The issue is how do you nourish your talent and make sure that the talent you have can interact with the best talents everywhere else in the world and create a fantastic future. Thank you.
Well, before I come to the conference, I had no idea of the higher education in Malaysia. But I learned a lot today. I think so. I would like to, I think that we have the same problem in China in terms of government control and the lack of competition, and sometimes we are not happy with our government either. In particular, even control the tuition, how much you can charge, what the degree you can offer. Even we apply some joint program, like last year, we have a joint program between us and also NUS, University of Singapore, National University of Singapore. We have both president of NUS and Peking University approve agreement, then denied by so-called expert in Ministry of Education. So those way, I think that this definitely China's higher education should need a reform for sure. But on the other hand, I think there's something good in China what they are doing now. And first of all, they really try to attract the talent return to China. The picture I saw from Prof. Feng, this was early stage China. Line up to go depart, but a few come back. But now the situation changed. Part of the reason because China have a good economic situation, so attract people. On the other hand, the government really developed some program. Earlier we called the Yangtze River Scholar. So once you come back, you get some kind of title, scholar. But then they developed called 10,000 talent program. But not only applied to Chinese national, also applied to international foreigners. They call the foreign, we call Yang. Okay, that's called Yang Qianren, which is a foreign 1,000 talents also can be applied. For example, one of talent which I try to help him here is Jeff Lehman. He used to be the president of Cornell University, and then he come to our school, working for 5 years. Then he become the president of the NU side in Shanghai. So this is some government policy, try to attract more people. They maybe get educated abroad, but they come back to China. So the picture now in China is you not only see still people go outside, but also a lot of people arrived. So the other part of airplane now also crowded. So that is something I think it's good as a national policy and government policy. Now they not only 1,000, but now they also developed 10,000 plan. What in Chinese is 10,000 plan. This is the one part of policy. The other one is they try to attract because China really encourage the university can kind of cooperate with international top university. So we all get the kind of pressure. We should. We are not. We also have some kind of plan. Have to reach the top. At the beginning, they have a plan called 100 university should become top university. But then the government realized it's difficult. Okay, the plan, the 100 university. So now they lock on 2 universities first. Peking University or the Tsinghua University, they want to become top university. But then now all the provinces have an incentive to support their, the university located in their province. So now we have, it's kind of a competition between the universities. Now it is really happening. Well, of course, still in China, two are top one. They all compete for the third one. Okay? Everybody else say we are the third ranked in China because they know the first two is hard to challenge, but they compete for the third. And then we have many now international universities like University of Moscow, NYU, and many international universities now set up a campus. So this is another direction, try to attract to kind of, so China's competition is a little bit different from the regular. They, through the international university, try to compete with the domestic. So I'm not sure. Anyway, on the one hand, we do need to reform in our higher education, but on the other hand, the government now really realize the problem, how to attract the more talent to come back. Then the other good part is now they always increase the government budget. We are pushed, but also government every year increase budget to the university. If you go to Shenzhen are more look like California many years ago. Okay, economic development first, and then they now put a lot of money for higher education. Even they attract at least 5 international universities set up a campus in Shenzhen, including CUHK. Okay, CUHK, they have a campus in Shenzhen. The University of Moscow have a campus in Shenzhen.
Good weather.
Anyway, I'm just to introduce some kind of share with you what China is doing, try to attract them more the other side of airplane.
Thank you. Well, in Malaysia, we have just heard a lot about the attempts by many countries to get talents all over the world. In Malaysia, the people getting after it's much easier to give working permits to maids and construction workers than to technical professionals in this country. So,
thank you very much, Professor. So, I come from the private sector and I enter the government with one very, very simple philosophy. Instead of cursing the darkness, why not light a candle? That is a simple philosophy. What can you do to change the situation? But nevertheless, we have to be very realistic. We can always cheat ourselves, but I do that to myself all the time. So today I'll talk about perspectives. Perspectives. When I went to Taiwan, I told the Taiwanese government that I'll be seeing the Malaysian University postgraduate students. That is, oh, Vincent, do you want to bring them back to Malaysia? I said, of course not. I want them to stay in Taiwan. They said, why suddenly you want to talk to them? I said, I would never ask them to come back because they are living in a very, very good ecosystem in Taipei. In all the research universities, they have access to the best they can get, and they can perform, and they are driven by purpose, they are driven by so many other things, and they are really excelling in their circumstances. So then the Taiwanese asked, in that case, why do you want to talk to them? I said, I am creating a Malaysian Innovation Hub, and I want to draw on their talents. We are no longer looking at Malaysians as Malaysian and draw a border or box around ourselves. I go to Taipei and I declare myself as a global citizen. I go to the middle of Beijing, I can put on my hand, I'm a Chinese, but I'm a global citizen. I go to London, I say I'm a global citizen. And I want this concept to be brought across. Of course, I would love them to come back to Malaysia, but if, on the other hand, they can perform better and contribute better in their countries, they can still contribute to Malaysia through the so-called Malaysian Innovation Hub or Global Innovation Hub, which is our next target. So we have to think about perspective. Is it fair that we ask our children to come back who are really doing very well in Harvard or Berkeley or Princeton or whatever, No, they should not come back. We should be asking them to contribute in whatever best way that they can do. They can make our country proud. You read the news only a few weeks ago. The richest woman in Australia is a Malaysian woman in the telecommunication business. And I think I'm very proud of her. Like I said, Olivia Lam from Kampa, an orphan. She's a billionaire now in Singapore. And she's doing all the very, very good desalination plants in Saudi Arabia. I'm very proud of her. I go down to Singapore, I look for our Malaysians, and I said, would you like to contribute back to Malaysia as well? But at the same time, we also help to promote you globally. So we have to start thinking, perspective, are we looking at Malaysia or are we looking at global? So I'd like to end up with a simple story about this corn farmer. Every year, he receives awards for having the best corn in the district. So he will carry bags and bags of his seeds, corn seeds, to go to the fair. And then people will be given all the corn seeds to plant around him. And then his friends ask him, you are the best corn grower, and yet you are giving your best seeds to your neighbors. Why do you do so? He said, why not? Because if they have inferior seeds and they have inferior plants, the pollens will come over to my cornfield and I will have inferior plants as well. So we have to think about benefiting our neighbors in order to benefit ourselves. Malaysia should be very, very proud that we have so many Malaysians all over the world. I travel all over the world and I'm very, very happy. Wherever I go, I have been given very, very good receptions. And I always tell them, you must always remember where you come from. In the Chinese say, when you drink water, you must know the source. But on the other hand, I would love to see you grow to your maximum potential wherever you are, be it London, New York, or anywhere. But always remember where your water comes from. And if possible, collaborate for the betterment of society. So that is the aim of this Malaysian Innovation Hub. We are not saying that they have gone, our children have gone, and that's the end of the story. No, we are now going global, and we have to think global and consider ourselves global citizens. Thank you very much.
Put one more situation. When China, the university attract the distinguisher of the Chinese scholar outside, another request them to quit the job over there, because sometimes we'll take advantage. Because American school, they have paid 9 months, but there are 3 months can get another employment. So it's kind of still connected this other university. So they still can do very good at other university. At the same time, connecting the two universities through those kind of joint appointments.
Yeah.
Very good. I would like to open up the discussion to include all of you. I recognize first hand. So feel free to give comments on what has been discussed. Sir?
2 questions quickly. The first question is, it seems to me there could be controversy here because Vincent is actually gives me the impression that he's talking about picking winners by the state, for which a lot of people in the West, they say it's not a good idea, nor should be left to the private sector. That is the first question, because you seem to be suggesting that. And the second question is, the idea of a Sephora, which is replicated the world over already. It started with some multinational accounting firms, that those guys leaving the firm doesn't matter as long as they still carry our KPMG name or whatever it is. It was born from there, and this kind of diaspora, lately India also wants to copy that. In other words, the mobility talent situation, there are push and pull factors. Now, how are we going to manage that? I would like to ask a question of the entire committee, for that, professors here. How are we going to engage with this comprehensively? 2 questions.
Okay, let's take more questions so they can select to answer those that make us look good. I'll be honest. Yes, sir. And then you.
maybe I don't have a question, but I would like. Maybe I don't have a question, but I would like to pick up on something that Professor Feng has mentioned. If I paraphrase you, understood you correctly, I think you said that university is more than industry linkages. I want to echo that fact because I think, you know, so often we emphasize that and forgetting the fact that a university is actually an institution of education and not working just for the industry. I think that's important for us to remember. I say that because I've spent 20 years teaching in the United States. Though it was a small school, but the idea of education as strictly or very strongly linked to, you know, industry is seldom heard. I know the big schools like Stanford, they do play that up. But there are so many other schools, good teaching schools, liberal arts colleges. They put a lot of emphasis on what education is, not so much on just getting good jobs, but actually training students to lead meaningful lives and telling them how to do that. I think that's, sadly to say, maybe I'm wrong, maybe my experience of Malaysian education has been limited since I came back. I think that is so much missing here. And like I said, I just have a comment on that. Thank you.
Yusuf.
It's basically about your innovation thing. Thank you. So on the thing that I normally know is because the state are now going to do the innovations, maybe with cooperation, other UC, other country. So when you come to commercialization, what are the obstacles you will face for you to commercialize to who, and who are the taker from that? Even those from your slide, I did say that you're talking about those GLC, all this and that. But based on my little experience as an entrepreneur in the private sector, I find that whenever states agency come in, especially in Malaysia context, it creates a lot of confusions and conflict of interest. So maybe you can answer to how are you going to stimulate this conflict of interest, and who are the takers? Are you going to put for tenders or whatever stuff? Thank you.
Okay, I think we have the first round of questions. You'll be next. So I'd like to invite members of the panel to respond to. Well, then I'll take to say the push and pull factors of talents. Given the fact that there's a strong pull of Malaysian talents out of this country, we should certainly try to minimize the push factor. I mean, the pull factor certainly exists, so there's no need to add any push. If that's what I would say.
Just on the same topic. It's not just China, but even before that, Korea, Taiwan made major efforts to take full advantage of the people. You know, to turn the fact that many of their best trained people were staying long periods in the U.S. and sometimes Germany and elsewhere, and they made huge efforts to get them to come back. I remember meeting with a minister of science in Korea back in the late 1960s. He said to me, you know how many Koreans we have with PhDs in the national sciences? And of course I had no idea. He said, well, we have about 1,200. And you know how many of those we have in Korea? About 20. Well, yeah, that was the late 60s. Korea was still not a terribly attractive place, but Korea was beginning to figure out a way to, and they created a variety of institutions, the Korean Institute of Science and Technology, the Korea Development Institute, which I was involved in helping get started, brought back, they had 6 PhD economists in Korea. KDI brought back 12 more. They tripled the number. Well, they're now 2,000 or 3,000, but PhD economists. So, you know, Hsinchu Park in Taiwan, they even created schools so that people could come back, and if their children wanted to still stay within the American education system, they could continue to do so, but the parents would come back. I think, you know, there's nothing remotely comparable in the Malaysian case. And in the Malaysian case, you have it's so easy for the Malaysians to go to Singapore. But instead you actually have a system that, at least from some ethnic groups, actually makes it difficult for them. And you know, one more step in the U.S., we make a big effort, at least when we're not, when some of our congressmen aren't making a total mess of things, which is a good deal of the time, but we're trying to, you know, make it possible for the highly skilled people that come to the U.S. to stay. If we were dependent totally on Americans, American-born and raised, to staff our high-tech companies, we would be in trouble. But we get all of these students coming to universities and they stay. You know, Malaysia, to some degree, you know, dries them out, makes it more difficult. So you know, that's, I think, an enormous barrier to this next phase of growth.
You know, all of you have heard of this place in Northern California called the Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley is known for ICs. So you probably think of it as integrated circuits. But it really means Indians and Chinese. I know that mentioning Lee Kuan Yew's name is not a good thing in Malaysia. But I heard recently, and I cannot confirm it because I cannot find that quote. He said something actually has in relations with China. He said that, and I hope someone would find that quote for me someday. Say in the long run, he said, China is in no competition with the United States. And people were wondering, why do you say this? He said, oh, it's very simple. China selects its talent from 1.4 billion people. U.S. selects its talent from 7 billion people. China cannot beat that. Ultimately, for China to become a world power, they too will have to look for talents, if not 7 billion, at least 2, 3, 4 billion. Now, come back to Malaysia. I said in my talk, if you compare Taiwan, Korea, and Malaysia, Taiwan is a single ethnic society. Korea is a single ethnic society. Malaysia is a multi-ethnic society. That's your strength, not your weakness. Don't make your strength your weakness. And so, in fact, I was telling my colleagues at the University of Macau, why do we want students from Malaysia? Well, I said, because A, they speak 4 or 5 dialects of Chinese. B, they speak fluent English. And C, they all speak good Malay. No students in Greater China, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau, or China have that kind of a background. You're way ahead. And so that's why I want them to come to Macau. I want them to show the Macau people what global view is. And once again, I want to emphasize, multi-ethnicity is your strength, is a very, very powerful strength of Malaysia, not your weakness.
Thank you very much. I'd like to share a story when I went to Taiwan, reflecting on what Professor just now said. I went to Taiwan Tech, and they were welcoming to me, and then they put 100 innovations on the table. He said, Vincent, I want you to market this for us. I said, wow, that's very interesting. Why do you think I can do that? Oh, don't you know that your country is so blessed with lots of resources, and Taiwan has got none? I said, well, maybe I know a bit about that. Don't you know that your country is the chair of ASEAN Plus 3, and there's a lot of networking that you have there, and a big population. And Taiwan doesn't have that. Taiwan has no diplomatic relationships with a lot of those countries. I said, well, that's definitely an advantage that we do have. And then on top of that, you are one of the leaders of the OIC, Organization of Islamic Countries. You have very, very good access to Saudi Arabia and all that. So that one Taiwan doesn't have. So isn't that put you in such a position that you can be the best marketeer for Taiwan? I said, well, that's a new perspective. But do you know one thing? Malaysians are shortchanging ourselves when other countries are not. So that is one of the things that I always like to talk about perspective. You look at from the other side, you say, woe is me, yeah? But on the other side, they look at you and say, wow, you really have been made. So this is one of the other things. Now coming back to innovation. The universities, all universities, I go to Taiwan, I go everywhere, Singapore, they have been operating on a very, very simple concept. I have got a patent, and you want it, I license it to you, and you pay me royalty over a certain period of time. So when I went to the Ministry of Education, I said, this can't happen. It can't work. Look, it has never worked anywhere. In Malaysia, I have gone to UPM. They got 1,500 over IPs. And have they really succeeded in licensing them out? I've gone to Taipei Tech and asked them, how many of your patents have you actually commercialized? 3%, Vincent. And I go to E3, 25,000 patents. And I said, how many actually have been commercialized? 600 over, also 3%. But of course, a university like Taiwan Tech, they claim they have 15% products. But again, some of them are only one product, one off. Like for example, this professor said, I am the one who designed Taipei 101. Very pendulum lah, and what I can withstand earthquake, hurricane, and all that. Vincent, would you like this technology to bring back to Malaysia? I stared at him. I said, I don't think so, because I'm not going to have another 101-story building in Malaysia. I mean, probably not in that standard where we have earthquakes and what we call hurricane. So probably I don't need this technology. But do you know that we earn a lot of money, but we only build one building from Taiwan Tech? So again, it's all perspectives where we come from. If you are thinking that the government is promoting innovation and therefore the government want to benefit, wrong. MOE is not in the business of business. They just want to promote the universities to start thinking outside the box. Instead, when we started this program with me, I said, I am from the Prime Minister's office. I do not want to take this position. He said, no, Vincent, if you don't take this position, the whole innovation hubs initiative will be scrapped. Don't take. Because we do not want a project to kick off without a face, without a leader. So you have to take it. So I said, but I'm working in the Prime Minister's office. So I said, I will only be an acting CEO until such time I find somebody to take over. They said, fine. But you have to be responsible. And number two, I said, if I am responsible, then I play by my rules, not the government rule. You cannot control me. So the first rule is, I do not touch any government's money. So I operate all entirely from my own pocket. I fly to Taiwan, I go stay in hotel, I meet people, all self-funded. Because the moment, like you said just now, you touch government's money, there will be lots and lots of additionally guilty issues. So I position myself there. As to how the business sector works, I tie up with the Chinese Chamber. I tie with FMM, Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers. I tie with Taiwanese companies. And it worked very well because we are looking at from a business point of view. We are no longer talking about a showcase put in the newspaper where the Prime Minister may announce that I got this 10 or 12 IP and I'm going to raise $100 million from the sale of it. It did not work and it will not work. That's why we run everything parallel. The government and the universities can carry on what they want to do. I work parallel. If I deliver, I deliver. If I can't deliver, there's no skin off the nose of the government. On their record, Vincent did not spend a single cent of their money. So that is our understanding. In a way, this is called PPP, public public-private partnership.
Okay.
Okay, so does that answer your question? Like yesterday, I had a dialogue in UM, and there were more than 12 private sector people, and I got a whole team of people from University Malaya, and we had a dialogue, and I had to chair the meeting. And it was very well done. A lot of the private sector were very happy that University Malaya got this technology, that technology, and they are going to participate. I go to UPM, they have got the 1005. I managed to refer them to potential partners, for at least 1/3 of them, and they are very happy. I get very, very glowing reports that I've done my part on behalf of the government. But again, what does it mean? Networking, looking at the products, integrating them into systems. These are the things that we do. So I hope that answers your question. Maybe part of it. So anyway, I think I end up with another story. Do you know about drinking Japanese wine? Have you all have Japanese wine with a Japanese?
Yeah.
While you have dinner?
Yeah.
And the fellow keep pouring your cup.
Yeah.
And he expects you to pour his cup. So then I asked him, why do you have this culture? The Chinese, you just yam-sing and then we don't pour for you, you don't pour for me. Then he told us a story about heaven and hell. Heaven and hell. So I said, how does this story work? He said this young monk was asking the old monk, what is heaven and what is hell? So the old monk said, in hell, there's a big pot of noodles in the middle, and you're all given a pair of chopsticks 3 feet long. So everybody rushed to collect the noodles and to try to eat the noodle, but because of the chopstick so long, everybody will drip the noodles down the floor and they're hungry. They see noodles, but they can't eat it. So then the young man said, oh, that's hell. What about heaven? Or same thing. Heaven also a big pot of noodles, and everybody given a pair of chopsticks. Oh, what's the difference then? In heaven, you pick up the noodles and you give it to your friend. And your friend said, thank you very much. Now can I return the favor? So you return the favor to me by giving me the noodles using your chopstick. That's why in Japan, I pour wine for you, you pour wine for me. So that is the whole concept of working together. Thank you very much.
Prof, can I say something?
Yes. Oh, why don't you? Okay, maybe short.
I want to comment from my perspective why the best talents don't really want to come to Malaysia. From my perspective. Because you all are not Malaysians. Also, I consider Prof not to be really like Malaysian. He has been living in the US. I think the problem is, and please take it in the positive side, and even if there are politicians looking at me through that camera, the problem is a lot of our political leaders say different things at different locations. That is the fundamental problem. In front of a group of people, they will say, no, we are multiracial, we are okay, we want people from all over the world. On another occasion, they can be saying something else altogether. I've gone to so many of these occasions, and normally I become quite sad and disappointed, because I think this is the problem with this country. The politicians are, I mean, I don't mean all, but I'm trying to say that many of the politicians are not true to themselves. They are not really trying to promote what is really good for the country. For example, I don't find it really a problem to attract very, very good talents into Multimedia University or UM. I know which network to use and so on. But I do hear from a lot of expatriates who come and work in this country who wants to leave. Why? Because they feel they are not welcome anymore. They feel that if they go to some other countries, landing there after 6 months, they get a PR and they can even get a citizenship. But Malaysia doesn't do that, you know. And not only that, there are some universities where the foreign professors are given heavier workload than the locals. So this sort of inequalities, this kind of prejudices is not going to really attract the best brains into this country. And there's no clear statement from our political leaders how these issues should be tackled. You know, if you really follow the issue of university, world university ranking, a lot of politicians are just not brave enough to say, not like what Hu Jintao made that statement. I remember in the Great Hall. On different occasions they will say something else, And sometimes as a university vice chancellor, you become confused. What is the minister really wanting us to do? So again, I think we have too many leaders who are just interested to protect their survival, their interests, more than trying to really put our country into a real success path. I think that's the underlying problem in this country. And I'm saying that after so many years of experience leading institutions. Of course, our friends from US and Macau and so on is wondering why it is like that, but that is a fact in this country. That our leaders are not really honest about it, not really wanting to say openly what should be the line. I think a lot of ministers don't even know what it takes to become excellent. Everything is all about interest. Rather than willing to stand on principles and what will take this country really progressing, on a competitive path with all the other countries in the world. And I think if Malaysia wants to go forward and being very competitive, these things has to be straightened up again. I think if Malaysia goes on like this, I think it's going to be a very tough struggle to go anywhere, I think. So I think this is a fundamental problem in this country, that we don't have real, honest, what is it, the next word? I think that underscores the bottom line of the whole issue here. And I've been leading universities in the past, and sometimes it is a lone struggle. The job of VC is a very lonely job. Very lonely, and I've been lonely all my life.
Please, let's have this. Thank you. Okay. My question refers to migration again. Several panelists have mentioned the impact of the outflow of highly skilled, highly educated, well-paid people. Malaysia also has a significant inflow of migrants. As was mentioned, they tend to be more of the less skilled, lower paid group. They go into construction and manufacturing and services across the board. I would expect that that has the impact of constraining the growth of lower paid workers. I would expect too that it may be influencing the trigger that you mentioned, leads to a growth in productivity when the flow from agriculture into the cities ends, because we continue to we found this other source. I wonder what the net effect of migration is on development, and I wonder whether there's interests again are driving our experience.
Well, the lady, you have the last word.
Okay, thank
The
you.
last question.
It's not a question. I just want to, when we were to go to a foreign country for education, it was generally the first degree or the diploma or it used to be transfer credit, where the students would prefer to go for 2 years and they would come back, or sometimes they would work and eventually they would come back. But now the trend is, for the last 4 and 5 years or so, even the first degree, associate degree, diplomas, whatever, students have started to go away from Malaysia. realizing probably the education system itself is not fruitful. So probably that's where the brain drain is, whereby we are already pushing them away, not keeping the brainy kids here. We could possibly keep them here, no matter, we are multi-ethnicity country. So obviously, all students, Malaysians, should be treated equally, and if you are to get excellent grades, so the opportunity should be given equally. But unfortunately, I'm not against anything here. Unfortunately, that's not what's happening. Because of the quota system and all that, students are driving themselves out. The parents are supporting the students to leave, to get that education required for them. So once they leave at the young age of 17 and 18, and they get a 4 years education in a foreign country, any Western countries or wherever they are, obviously that's where they learn the basics of life, and they start loving it, and they live there, they want to live there. They obviously, to bring them back, it's a task.
Especially if there's someone there.
The question of whether low-income immigration is a good or bad thing, it probably, among unskilled people already in the country, it may well help lower their wages. It may also, as you I think indicated, it might make possible some of that productivity growth that comes from shifting people out of that. In the U.S., which I'm more familiar, because we have whatever it is, 11 million illegal immigrants. There's lots wrong with them being there illegally, because that creates various kinds of repression and so on. But their actual being there, most of what they do are jobs that no American is going to do. As Americans don't want to pick vegetables. There are not very many Americans willing to spend their life mowing people's lawns and taking care of their gardens and whatever, and so on and so forth. So there are a whole lot of sort of unskilled jobs that very few. Now, if they didn't come in, you would have some of these things that you'd get high-paid people to do it, and the rest of it just wouldn't get done. The reason people come in that case is because the wages are high. And in the U.S. case, you can make a very clear case. You're never going to solve the illegal immigration problem until Mexico and Central America have much higher incomes and don't come. And I suspect that's the same thing is true in Malaysia vis-a-vis Sumatra and other parts of the Indonesian archipelago. So,
but
some
you
sense
do have government-sanctioned programs to bring large quantities in.
Well, there are plenty of Republican congressmen in the U.S. who say that was a good idea. It's obviously in the interest of some businesses to do that, and probably because it also lowers wages and so on. It's too complicated to say that's a yes or a good thing or a bad thing, but it can't be all. From the standpoint of, for example, harvesting of the crops in America, you can't get it done unless you allow them, unless they come in. Right now they come in illegally, and all they're doing is saying, let them come in legally. They aren't really competing against very many Americans. I think that's positive. And I've wandered around that subject long enough.
Well, I think the immigration go outside for the study. In China, most of the students go outside for graduate study, so that will make a difference. if you're too young, be there, and it's hardly come back. So my point is, at least, of course, the top research school still is the U.S., the developed country. It's very hard to change the fact now. Even China, the top student, like 1/3 of our PKU students, undergraduate, they go abroad. So, but we have to maintain a very good, high quality undergraduate program. That is realistic. So at least keep them have a very good undergraduate education. Then they can go abroad for the research part. Then it's also be easier for them to come back because they grew up. Same thing. My daughter. My daughter was born in the U.S. Younger. Then I asked her, "Where are you want to work in the future?" She said, "I'll back to China." Then I said, "You have to study undergraduate in China." Now, so you have a lot of friends, and then also it's easy for her in the future, either get a PhD in the U.S. but they come back to China, or so that is something more realistic, I think, to keep the people here. She now in Beijing. She is first fresh in Peking University.
I want to add a point. I mentioned about earlier about our leaders who are telling different things at different time. There's one more thing which I need to mention, and I think this is a problem not just in Malaysia but in many countries too. But I think in some countries the government is really fighting hard to solve this problem, and this is involving corruption. In China, you are caught for corruption is death penalty. Isn't that correct, sir? Yes. In Indonesia, I think I visited a university there, and when I visited, the president was showing me one picture where the university was given an award by a local governor there. But then the president told me at the end, said, "But this governor is now in prison, sir." So in Indonesia, they send corrupt officials, including governors, to prison.
Yep.
And as you know, recently when the new president came into office, he allowed the anti-corruption to vet through all the background of the candidates, and 8 of them was rejected, right? Because they had record which is not good lah, in terms of corruption and so on. I think now I'm partly doing academic work like this, and I'm also partly doing some private sector work. The issue of corruption is a problem, and it is involved in immigration, in customs, and so on. And this is really killing this country also. The cost of doing business goes up. Why do you think that after so many years and so on and so on, we still have a labor crunch? Why are there so many illegal immigrants and so on? Why do you think that is the case? When this could have been sorted out so long ago? I tell you, if we want to progress further, we have to be serious to fight corruption, quite honestly. And corruption bites into everything. And therefore, I think not only that we need leaders to have more principle and say things straight, but we really need to clean up our country. Otherwise, it will be very tough, I think. I think corruption is even more serious than drug trafficking now. And I believe in another seminar somewhere else, I did mention that I think we should follow China, that we should introduce the death penalty for corruption. Honestly. And a lot of people will not like what I say, but it is a serious threat to our country now. Thank you.
Well, all things have to come to an end. I thank all of you for your kind patience. And this is the first of a series of workshops on education that Ghauth Jasmon intends to organize. So I hope to see many of you again at our next education workshop. And let us give our participants. And thank you all for coming and have a good evening.